You don't go to school, you can't be educated.
New details about the 16 Siders children and the paper trail that suggests someone was searching for them long before they were ever found.
So when we're talking reading and writing and education, we're talking a whole nother level of expectations here.
I have the explosive records that reveal this story began long before we thought it did, plus the big move made by the judge to stop people from talking about the case. I'm Anjanette Levy, and this is Crime Fix. We have a lot to discuss with the Siders case out of Ohio. A lot. We've uncovered some new details, and the judge has actually signed a gag order, preventing the people involved in the case on the prosecution side or the defense from talking about it. But first of all, I've been telling you that Children's Services in Ohio County had been in touch with members of the Siders family. Well, now we have documents showing there was not only concern by Children's Services about the Sider children, but also grave concern on the part of the school district where the Siders children were supposed to attend school. And that concern goes back years. It's been exactly 2 weeks since deputies in Vinton County, Ohio, went to the home where Elizabeth Siders and her husband, Gary Siders Jr., were living. They went there to execute a search warrant as they investigated a crime. What deputies and Ohio BCI agents found was not what they were expecting. They said they found 16 children ranging in age from 1.5 to 18 inside the home on Omer Street. The children, according to the state attorney general, were not in good shape.
Through that right now, some of these children couldn't even speak. Yeah, so I mean, we're talking. This is very. It was terrible. I mean, it looked like almost feral animals. It was terrible. So when we're talking reading and writing and education, we're talking a whole nother level of expectations here. Like it's hard enough just to get these kids to be able to the 18-year-old can't spell it.
Since that press conference, we've learned that some of the older children have social media accounts, but just how much they can spell and write remains a question.
A court order filed in Gallia County, Ohio, in January of 2022 reads exactly as follows. The court finds that Elizabeth Siders is unable to be served. The whereabouts of Elizabeth Siders are unknown to the court. Therefore, it is hereby ordered that the above matter be terminated until the availability of Elizabeth Siders. That matter was a truancy complaint. 6 children, chronically absent from school. And with that single sentence, a court file involving 6 missing children was closed, stamped, and shelved. Not solved. Shelved. It would sit there, untouched, for almost 4 years, until deputies executing an unrelated search warrant found 16 children living behind a closed door in a house 1 county over, in conditions the state's attorney general would later describe in a phrase this channel will not repeat, because the transcript already speaks for itself.
Thankfully, the children have all been released from the hospital. They're with foster families. The house on Omer Street remains taped off by crime scene tape. The conditions inside have been described as something you wouldn't even see in a third world country. Videos circulating online show the filth in the house. The children were kept in a 12 by 12 room, according to the sheriff.
As I was saying, most of our livestock was kept in better conditions than the children. It was extremely high presence, I'm sure, of bacterial and human feces. It was just a disgusting scene.
Can I ask both of you, what did you feel like while you were there? Not necessarily what it looked like on the description, but what was going through your mind?
So it was disgusting even where the kids weren't. I would think it's typical. Most law enforcement have experience with homes in a similar fashion. A large number of people, though, the children were kept in a roughly 12 by 12 area that it seems like is where they've spent the most of the last 4 years, and that's what it looks like. In a weird way, you're hit with two emotions. There is joy when we realize that we're about to change 16 lives for the better.
Somewhere between that shelved file and that search warrant for years past. This is where we start. Before we go further, understand what you are actually looking at here. This is not a story about a raid. This is a story about a paper trail that existed, that was filed, that was read by at least one court clerk, one truancy officer, one judge, and that led, ultimately, nowhere. The silent objection exists for exactly this kind of case. Not the loud one, the quiet one, the one where the record itself does the accusing and nobody in the room needs to raise their voice. The people at the center of this are not complicated to introduce because the documents already introduced them. Gary Siders Sr. and his wife Christina Lynn Siders. Their son, Gary Siders Jr., and his wife, Elizabeth Siders. For adults, now facing 16 counts each of child endangering. A charge that, in plain terms, means a caregiver knowingly created or allowed conditions that put a child's health or safety at serious risk. All four have pleaded not guilty.
4 Siders family members, Gary Siders Sr. and his wife Christina Lynn Siders, along with their son Gary Jr. and his wife Elizabeth Siders, face 16 counts of child endangering. They've all pleaded not guilty to the charges. Gary Sr. has been released from jail and placed in a hospital after he fell and a more serious condition was discovered. The last we heard, he was still in the hospital. The Vinton County prosecutor says the children were found in the house, but that the family was not from Vinton County.
I want to stress that our focus right now is on the safety of the children. These kids are being evaluated medically, and we're trying to get them placed, and that is our primary concern right at this point. I also want to stress this is not conduct that is acceptable in Vinton County. These individuals were not from Vinton County. This is not appropriate and certainly is not reflective of the Vinton County values.
Gary Sr. was released from custody after a serious medical episode and remains hospitalized. None of what follows is a finding of guilt. It is a description of a paper trail, and paper trails, unlike people, don't get the benefit of an unfavorable interpretation. They simply exist, dated and filed, for anyone willing to go looking. And someone did go looking. In October of 2021, the Gallia County School District filed a truancy complaint, the formal term for a legal filing alleging that a child has been unlawfully absent from school for an extended period without excuse. Ohio law requires parents to enroll their children and ensure attendance. Failing to do so, once a child crosses a statutory threshold of absences, opens the door to fines or even neglect charges. The complaint named 6 of the Siders children. It stated, in the language of the filing itself, that the children had been absent for the entire academic year, in excess of 72 hours, and were therefore habitually truant. The oldest child named was 13.
Now, I've told you that the family was originally from Gallia County. Gallia is the county south of Vinton, and records show the family moved to Vinton County about 4 years ago. And there was likely a reason for that move. The puzzle pieces here, they're fitting together. They are painting the picture. It's becoming very clear. I've been telling you for the last week, the Children's Services had been looking into the Siders family. That look at them started in Gallia County back in 2021. The juvenile court in Gallia County went looking for the Siders after the older children didn't show up for school. The Siders' home at that time was on Honeysuckle Drive in Cheshire. That's the address listed on the court documents. These records show that in October 2021, complaints had been filed against Elizabeth and Gary Siders because 6 of their children were considered truant, meaning they were chronically absent from school. The complaint states the child's name, which we have blacked out. Then it states that Gary and Elizabeth have failed to cause said child to attend some school or class as required by law. The child has been absent from school without legitimate excuse for the entire 2021-2022 academic year to present an amount in excess of 72 hours for the school year, and as such is thereby a habitual truant. Now, this truancy complaint is for 6 of the 16 Siders children. Of course, some weren't even born yet. The oldest at that time would have been 13.
Several of the 16 children eventually found in that house hadn't been born yet. Here is where the record becomes genuinely difficult to sit with. To be found truant, a child first has to exist inside the system, registered, assigned to a school, expected somewhere. These 6 children were registered, and according to the district, they never attended. Not for a single day. A family can lawfully educate children outside the school system in Ohio, but only through a formal homeschooling registration process with the district. That registration, according to the record, was never filed. So these were not homeschooled children in any sense the law recognizes. They were, in the words of one attorney interviewed about the case, completely AWOL from the system, simply absent from it, with no legal mechanism accounting for where they'd gone.
In the state of Ohio, it's illegal to not send your children to school. Parents have a duty and an obligation to ensure their child is in school. The statute states that parents whose children are determined to be habitually truant and do not get their kids to school can face fines or even child neglect charges. Eventually, the complaints were terminated in January of 2022. A document states the court finds that Elizabeth Siders is unable to be served and the whereabouts of Elizabeth Siders are unknown to the court. Therefore, it is hereby the order of the court that the above matter be terminated until the availability of Elizabeth Siders. The same document was filed for Gary Jr., the named father of the children. The court couldn't find Gary and Elizabeth or the children. The children had to have been registered for school, but the school district said they never attended, not even for a day, it would seem. That raises the question, had the Siders already moved in 2021? Were they still in Gallia County, or had they already moved to Vinton County?
So the county did what the process requires. It filed a complaint and attempted service, the formal legal act of delivering court paperwork to a person so they are officially notified of a proceeding against them. And it couldn't. The court's own filing states the family's whereabouts were unknown. Try to sit with that phrase for a moment, because it is doing a great deal of quiet work. A government system, tasked with confirming that 6 children were safe, could not locate the family attached to them, and its solution was to close the file. Should a truancy court be expected to function as a missing persons unit when a family it cannot locate has failed to explain the absence of 6 children? That's a fair question, and reasonable people will answer it differently. Leave your answer in the comments, because it is genuinely the question this entire case turns on. Records show that around the same period, Elizabeth Siders held a post office box in a village called Hamden, and that the family was listed at an address a short distance from where they would eventually be found. For years later, records also show the family relocated 1 county over, into Vinton County, one of the least populous counties in the entire state.
I've found records showing that Elizabeth had a P.O. box in Hamden as early as 2020. And she and her family are listed as living in this house on Main Street in Hamden before they moved a short distance away to the home on Omer Street. People have been drawn to that house. I met several there over the weekend. They don't understand how something like this could happen.
Just curious about this whole situation, because how can a whole family live like that and no one know it? I wanted to see, like, how close were neighbors. Usually in small towns, neighbors are friendly with each other, so how would you not know what's going on?
You live a couple counties away, right?
Yes, in Lawrence County.
So you live in Lawrence County. You came out here to see what was going on. This is out in the southeastern part of the state. Is it common for people to live like this with 16 children, filth, that you are aware of?
I mean, there are definitely places in each county, I'm sure, that have large families that have trouble taking care of everybody, that CPS doesn't know about and doesn't step in. And I think every county probably has some of that going on. It's just usually neighbors help take care of you, though. That's the best thing about living in a small town. Everybody knows everybody, so how would you not know that's going on?
A file that couldn't find them in Gallia County simply never had the chance to find them again in Vinton County, because by the time anyone had a reason to look, the file had already been closed for years. That closed file is the ticking clock at the center of this story, and it's worth being precise about what kind of clock it was. It wasn't counting down toward a hearing, or a verdict, or a recess ending. It was counting down toward the next accident, the next search warrant, filed for an entirely unrelated matter that happened to knock on the right door. Nobody in Gallia County set that clock deliberately, but once the file was marked terminated instead of unresolved, the clock started anyway, and it ran for nearly 4 years before anyone else in the system so much as glanced at it again. And here is where things get genuinely interesting, because a truancy file closed for lack of service is not, on its own, evidence of anything sinister. Families move. Service fails constantly in the ordinary business of family courts. What makes this case different is what happened on the other end of that same 4-year gap. Not one household of avoidance, but reportedly at least 10 hospital deliveries across those same years, At a facility, a former Franklin County prosecutor interviewed on this case pointed to directly, asking aloud whether a hospital seeing that many births to the same household over that short a span has any duty to ask a single follow-up question.
Well, I would tell you this, that historically there are 88 counties in Ohio, as you know, and Vinton County is always at the bottom of the list on being the poorest county in Ohio. So at least the tax base based on that would be low. And secondly, I would think that their primary goals would be the criminal justice kind of issues, the sheriff's office and the courts. And I don't know anything more than that they're a poor county, and therefore they probably have budgetary restraints. But certainly, somehow, somewhere, these folks and their children, if not at a hospital that has delivered 10 kids over a period of a few years, would maybe have even a mandatory duty to report the circumstances and situation to the authorities for them to look at it. Obviously, in Gallia County, it came to their attention by virtue of the lack of attendance, and that's 5 years ago. So within the last 5 years, somebody somewhere should have been looking to the circumstances of these children and their parents.
And that's a question I've been raising. If you go to the hospital and you have baby after baby after baby after baby, and you're not employed, it appears they're not employed. Like, does the hospital have a duty to say, like, how are you taking care of these kids?
Well, at least I think it's a legitimate question to ask, and I got to think they were on some kind of support, whether it's food stamps
Right.
or otherwise, and so you have to register for that at Jobs and Family Services. So at least somewhere along the line, and maybe, and I think it's true in some of the smaller counties, people are less nosy, if you want to call that, about the neighbors, and intentionally say what's it's not my business. But here with 16 kids, and there were two others, as you know, that were born that died shortly after. They were conjoined twins. That somewhere having 18 kids over 18 years. Now there were multiple births and twins, but still, that would cause somebody with that information, be it hospitals, OBGYNs, medical doctors that looked at a mom, prenatal, all those kind of factors fit into it.
Yeah, it's confounding, this whole thing. And when I was in town over the weekend, somebody told me they would come into the Dollar General store and pay with, they called it a food card, which that's like that EBT card. But the question is, who was that card registered to? And we're still trying to get to the bottom of that. Right now, the prosecutor has said, at least as of
no such duty currently exists in Ohio law. Whether it should is a conversation now happening in the state legislature, which has already approved $1 million in emergency funding for the children's care, a sum multiple officials have publicly called only a starting point.
As the investigation into the Siders continues and the prosecutor prepares the case for grand jury, the case is catching the eye of legislators in the state's capital.
On June 30th in Vinton County, we had an unprecedented situation where 16 children at one home at one time were added to the temporary custody of that county, more than doubling the number of children in needing care in that community. We are requesting $1 million in emergency resources to be made available specifically for the care of these children. I've been doing this in one capacity or another for 40 years. I've never seen anything like this. This is to have kids that would be off the radar. A child off the radar is troubling enough. 16 kids in one family in one household, to be off the radar is something that I've just not seen.
Ohio's controlling board approved sending $1 million to the Department of Youth and Children in Southeast Ohio to help care for the Siders' children. That amount could just be a drop in the bucket, though.
These kids are safe. They are being cared for. They are receiving treatments. And we expect there to be a lot more services that these children will need.
Now, slow down with me, because this is the part of the record that deserves to be read carefully rather than summarized. 16 children were located inside that Vinton County home. Their ages range from 18 months to 18 years. According to statements from the sheriff and the state attorney general, the children were kept largely within a single room, roughly 12 feet by 12 feet, for what investigators believe was most of the past 4 years. Some of the older children, by the account of officials at the scene, could not speak. The 18-year-old, the oldest, reportedly cannot spell. All 16 have since been released for medical care and placed with foster families. The house remains behind crime scene tape. Sit with the timeline one more time. Truancy complaint, filed and served, attempted and failed in 2021. File closed, not because the concern went away, but because the paperwork couldn't find the people it was written for. Family relocates. For more years pass. A search warrant, for a matter investigators still will not publicly disclose, brings deputies to a different door in a different county. And only then does the same 6 children the court once lost track of, plus 10 more, resurface, all at once, inside a single room. The case has not yet gone to a grand jury, the process by which prosecutors present evidence to a panel of citizens who decide whether formal charges should proceed to trial. And as of this recording, the presiding judge has issued a gag order, a court order restricting the sheriff, the attorney general, and the prosecutor from making further public statements about the case or its evidence.
Thank you. Now let's discuss this gag order, signed by Judge Rogers. The attorney for Gary Siders Jr. filed a motion asking for a gag order, citing the comments made by Ohio Attorney General Andy Wilson that I played for you earlier. Attorney R. Lee Roberts said the comments were putting his client and other defendants at risk of not receiving a fair trial. The judge signed the order, prohibiting the sheriff, attorney general, or prosecutor from making statements or releasing information about the case or the evidence. So stay tuned for more on that. And that's it for this episode.
The defense requested it, arguing that public comments from officials risk the defendant's right to a fair trial. Whatever comes next in this case, for now, will not come from a press conference. It will come, if it comes at all, from the next filing in the record, which is exactly where this story started.
They did in Cincinnati, and we did back in those days now.
You know, this case, the children not being in school is a red flag enough. That's a major red flag right there. But Ron, have you ever in your career, your lengthy career as a prosecutor, seen a family that just simply doesn't send their children to school and just squirrels them away, it appears they just have the kids, according to what the prosecutors have said, hidden in the house? I don't know if I've ever heard of such a thing.
Well, I would have to say that I've seen it before, but not with 16 kids. And that's
Really?
so amazing to me in this entire case, that people in Gallia County, people in Vinton County, neighbors, people at the gas station, grocery store, and whatever, no one in a small village of only 200 was aware that there were 16 kids behind the closed doors of that home. And that just kind of boggles your mind. And on top of which, this issue of schooling, issue of the small facility where they were being kept, it just is amazing as the facts unfold.
Here, then, is the lesson this file actually teaches, and it has nothing to do with this particular family. A closed case file is not the same thing as a resolved concern. When a government process cannot locate the people it was investigating, terminated until availability should never be treated as a satisfying final word. It is a placeholder, and placeholders require someone to eventually come back and check.
So, Ron, what is your reaction to the fact that we have these truancy complaints that have come to light out of Gallia County? We knew the family was originally from Gallia County, but back in 2021, October of 2021, the school district's going to court and saying these kids haven't been to school all year long, and then they can't track the parents down or the kids down.
Yes, and at least that would be the proper step to take when the school district or children's services learn that there are children not attending school at all. Usually the truancy cases we've had over the years are children that are excessively truant, and there's a statutory definition on different levels of absences, but it's somewhat rare to have children not at all going to school, and that's what happened here. And when they learned about it, apparently they filed a complaint in the Gallia County Court. But like any other court document, you have to get service, and they couldn't get service, is what I understand was the problem, number one. And number two, when they did try and find them, they were unable to find them either at different locations.
These kids in October of 2021, according to the court document, they hadn't been to school all year at all. So that's quite a long time. And in order to be truant, you would first have to be registered as a student in the school district, correct?
Yes, you'd have to register in the school district and be assigned to a specific school and then attend. And if they are at least excessively late, tardy, or truant, then there's a truancy officer that is to attempt to contact the parents. And apparently, in trying to contact them, they weren't able to do so, and that's why they filed the complaint.
If you are ever the parent, the neighbor, or the mandated reporter standing next to a system that says a case is closed for lack of contact, ask the only question that actually matters: closed or simply not finished? The Siders file sat answered that way for 4 years. Read the Gallia County Juvenile Court truancy filing yourself. Look at the date it was terminated, and ask yourself in the comments what should have happened differently in that gap. Because somewhere between a filing cabinet and a search warrant, 16 children were waiting for someone to ask the same question twice.